Hey, so today I want to talk about another random thing because yada yada, excuse, then I jump to the topic. Every intro is just, I'm going to talk about random thing, blah, 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 excuse, insult myself, topic. Anyway, the topic I want to talk about is the family tree. Now, I was kind of like thinking, like, what the fuck? Like, I had an idea what I wanted to talk about, but I was like, how do I talk about it? Do I use lineage? Do I use ancestry? Do I use bloodline? Like, what do I use to accurately talk about this, right? And the best I can think is family tree. It's a very basic, and it's probably like the most basic bitch form I could have picked. But at the end of the day, it's kind of the easiest. Because I guess bloodline could have worked, but I don't know. But the family tree, for if anyone doesn't know, because I'm going to be honest, for the longest time in my life, I didn't know what the fuck a family tree was. I thought it was just some weird thing that schools made you like take pictures of people in your family and just like put it in a picture of a tree, and that's kind of all I thought it was. But a family tree is basically like, your family, but on a tree. It's uh I don't know. I do know. Sorry, I like zoned out. It's when you take like there's the tree, right? The foundation of your family, the one who started your family, who most people don't know. Most people don't know how their family started because for the majority of people on earth, most of people can be traced back to Genghis Khan. So I think most people probably don't know where the hell they really come from other than at some point they're part of Genghis Khan. But family trees usually don't go far that back that far. Go far that back. What the fuck is wrong with me? Go back that far. Jesus Christ. They don't go back that far, and they're usually about to maybe great grandparents and maybe even great great grandparents. That's about it. And it'll usually be like, oh, my great grandfather, Gaylord Jimson over here, married Betty Lou Armadillo, and they married and they had my my great grandfather, and my great grandfather was named Jambalaya, whatever the fuck their last name was, I forgot, and he married Susan Soup Lover, and that's boiled into my grandparent, and it just keeps going, right? Like the family tree is like branches, right? That's the point. The point is that some people have like multiple family members, and they go off, like some people can have like maybe like two, three children, and then those three children sprout off into their own thing. They grow up, they get married themselves, or maybe they don't get married and they just have children, and then those children are supposed to be the continuation of the family tree, the branch, but that specific branch. And sometimes in family trees, there's an unfortunate circumstance of people not having children, maybe people that just can't have children, the child dying, maybe that entire part of the family just dying entirely, which is considered just when the branch itself dies because everyone's gone. Nothing can really happen. And I can definitely say that there's probably a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people in the world that definitely feel like they are the end of their family's branch. Like there are definitely a lot of people in this world that if you were to like say like, are you gonna continue this family tree? Are you gonna have children of your own? They're like, oh fuck no. Because we kind of live in a time where a lot of people don't want to have children, and it's not unreasonable because I think that there's a lot of good reason to not have children. Firstly, money. Secondly, economy. Thirdly, children. Like, who the fuck wants to deal with a child? Those shits suck. Children suck. They shouldn't exist. It should be like illegal for children to like be outside. Like, children should be like forced to like stay inside until they are like old enough to understand that they're being annoying. Sorry, I'm like ranting about my hatred of I hate children. They're so loud. Like, just shut up. Like, God, just shut up. Shove some candy in your mouth or something. Just shut up. We don't need to hear you every 10 seconds. You don't need to pick your nose and then slap people. Like, go away. Get away from me, you fucking disease ridden rat. Like, I hate children, okay? That. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. I just despise children. I don't want them anywhere near me. But if I was a father myself, I would be a little more better, right? Because I hate other people's children. But if I had a child of my own, I'd be different. I wouldn't be like that, right? I would actually be a caring father who tries to be attentive to their child. I wouldn't act the way I do to other people's children, and it probably wouldn't change. Like, even if I had a child, I'd still react that way to other people's children. because it's obviously different. Like, you don't want to deal with other people's children. If the child's not mine, I don't want it. Get it away from me. This fucking gross disease-ridden thing. Get this fucking creature away from me. Like, but obviously I'm not a father, and I never will be, probably. More than likely. But the reality is, a lot of people, they don't want to have children because of like things like the economy, the constant looming war that feels like it's constantly just over our heads. Um, Constant, like, I don't know, like prices being hiked up for like food and housing. And a lot of people would rather just have a pet, which is still pretty expensive to take care of. So I think the reality is that people just need to maybe not have anything they have to take care of. Not even like a plant. I feel like even a plant in this economy is too much. Hell, being in a relationship in this economy would be too much. You need to like literally work 3 jobs and be single, not have children, have no pets, live in a small box, and wish you were dead. That's kind of how things work nowadays. But that's me ranting about something stupid. But when it comes to family trees, a lot of people don't nowadays don't want to have children. And I went on a jokey rant, but there's some truth to it, and the idea of like the economy's a bit too fucked to have a child. And some people have children by accident. Some people have children too early. And, for some people don't believe there's a too early. Some people are like, as long as you're like 18, if you're having a child, you're a responsible adult. And it's like, most adults don't know what the fuck they're doing until they're like 35. And you expect an adult to know how to be a like upstanding parent by 18? Like, dude, like, I don't know. But like a lot of if it seems like a lot of family branches may just actually die nowadays because of people not wanting to subject their children to the living conditions of today, nor do some people want to take care of a child because like if you can choose between being in a happy relationship where maybe someday you can get married and you can continue to have a happy relationship, or you can choose to get married, have a creature that tears your relationship apart, screams, cries, throws up, shits, pisses, and drives a wedge between you two, and then you have to constantly remind it, like, it's not your fault. We just grew apart, but it was the child's fault. It's always the child's fault, okay? Look, every divorce is the child's fault. Everyone. If there's no child in like let's say two people get divorced and they don't have a child. It's still the child's fault because one of them was thinking about having a child and that was enough. Children kill marriages. Automatic. No contest. Like you take a couple that is happily married and you take another couple that's happily married and you plop a baby between those two will hate each other in a matter of seconds. I haven't even been talking about the fucking family tree. I've just been ranting about how fucking much I hate children and how much they ruin relationships. Now, I'm kind of joking a bit, obviously. The idea, like, a child does not necessarily break relationships. Sometimes parents have children when they're not ready, and that is the wedge, right? They have a child when they are not ready. It's not the child's fault. It's their fault for doing something that they were not ready for. And obviously, some people can't prepare because, sometimes one person's just a couple's just like, oh, I love you, I want to have sex, and then a condom breaks and that's it, right? Like there's nothing you really do. But the family tree for a lot of people is going to end solely because people nowadays don't want to have children. And there's another line that's a bit depressing, which is the idea that people who want children but can't physically have children, right? Like people like I don't really know, like dudes with like a narrow urethra or something. I don't fucking know. Or women with like no eggs. I don't know what causes people to be like infertile. I don't fucking know. Like I'm not a fucking dick and pussy scientist, okay? I'm just a guy who screams. But my point being is that some people don't want to have children and some people physically can't. And it's a bit sad. And I know some people can like adopt, right? And in a way, that's kind of an artificial branch, right? Because people would be like, oh, well, that doesn't count as a family tree growth because they're not real. But the reality is, adopting is kind of technically growing on it, but at the same time, it's weird. It's like if you took a tree, right, and you found a branch on the ground and you stapled it to another branch on that tree. But then that branch that you stapled is now growing more branches itself. So in a way, it's kind of just like a mismatched branch that you stapled to a tree where it was never a part of, and it grew from there and it continued this family tree, albeit artificially. You know, it's kind of like a nice little, like a sweet way of saying it, right? Because, you know, I think if a child is adopted, they should be, treated as one of the family, even if they're not, right? Like, I think an adopted child should be treated as that member of the family, right? Like, that's just, I don't know, that's just my opinion. Maybe someone else is just like, no, they shouldn't. They're not part of it. Like, I don't know. That kind of seems like a dickish way to say that, but I mean, I don't know. But, I think the likelihood of family trees uh or branches, like entire family trees don't really end, right? There's always someone, or maybe even someone who's like related to the family tree who they don't even know exists, and that person themselves is building on it. And then there's like some people who, I mean, might just straight never continue anything in the family tree just solely because they are the way they are. Not because they don't want children and not because they can't have children, but because they themselves are just a human repellent, right? Because there are people like that, right? There's people in the world who just repel humans, whether it be through personality or looks or just anything like that. And so the likelihood of them having a child is complete fucking zero. And honestly, I think that fits me. I'm pretty much a human repellent, man. I'm I like I may not be have a good relationship with my mom, but I feel bad for her in the sense of she probably wants to be a grandparent. She probably wants, to actually see like a grandchild. But I'm gonna have to unfortunately break the sad news to her that if she wanted grandchildren, she should have had an actual intelligent, likable son and not a complete idiot who talks into his phone at 12 in the morning, 11 p.m., whatever the fuck. I don't know. That's just, I mean, that's kind of on her. It's totally not my fault for being a loser. No, that's my fault. It's all my fault. But, branches die. Sometimes people don't get a chance. Sometimes shit just happens and people die. Sometimes people are just born unfortunate where they just can't have children. And some people just kind of look at the state of the world and think, I'm not subjecting a child to this. And honestly, that's how I kind of felt when I was born. I was like, as soon as I became an adult, I was like, Jesus Christ, you really just subjected a child to this. This is when you thought having a child was a good idea. Right now, you're an idiot. This is not when a child should be alive. That's how I felt when I became an adult. I was like, holy shit, my mom literally thought that having a child at this point in time was a good one. But whatever. It's funny. Family tree idea is funny. The whole reality that, like, some people can just straight choose to end an entire branch. The idea that, like, parents can be like, so are you married? So are you going to have a child soon? Like, that's another stereotype. The whole like thing you see in like cartoons and shows. I don't think it ever really happens. But the whole thing where like maybe like a guy or a girl and they're like almost 30, right? Like 28 or something. And they go to like Thanksgiving and then their mom and dad or their grandparents are like, so Timothy, Mr. Timothy, or well, I don't know what they call him, Mr. Their family. Be like, oh, Timothy, when are you gonna bring a nice girl home? And he's like, oh, I'm just busy with work, and well, I mean, I've tried going to some bars, but I don't know, man. I don't know. The girls just don't like talking to me. And they're like, oh, okay, okay, but we'd like to see some grandchildren before we die. It's always like that, right? But that's a stereotype. I feel like that doesn't happen that often. I think there are people who it does happen to, but it's very uncommon. And also, I love that the stereotype of like the parents and grandparents that ask for like them to get married and have children. There's a stereotype that differentiates between men and women, where when the woman like whenever a woman like doesn't date someone and they go talk to their family and they're like, oh, do you have a boyfriend or girlfriend yet? And then they're like, oh no. Like what they'll always do with like the woman is they will tell them like, oh well, you need to be this, you need to be that. Like they give them like all this advice on like how they have to act, like they have to like, you know be like a peacock and perform like a mating dance or something. They gotta like lure people in and be like, "Hey, look at me! I'm a hot single girl. Come get me." That's what like that's the stereotype for what the parents do to like the daughter or granddaughter that can't get someone. But then the stereotype for the men that I always see in like the shows, and like I said, none of this ever really happens. I'm sure it has, but it's very uncommon. But especially for like the men, like whenever like a dude is like single, like The stereotype is that the family will always be like, "Oh, so do you have a girlfriend?" He's like, "Oh, no." And they'll be like, "Oh, are you gay?" Like for some reason, the stereotype of like the parents asking if they're dating someone, if they're gonna have children, always comes around. For the women, it's advice, but it's bad advice. It's like basically just like serve yourself up on a platter and sleep with whoever, and then like the men get like the whole, "Oh, so you're gay." It's like I never understood that, like that joke in the shows. Maybe that was an older thing, right? Like maybe back in like the 80s, 90s, 80s, 70s, maybe that was common, right? Maybe it was common for like parents to like call their child out and be like, "Why aren't you dating someone? Are you gay?" Like maybe that was a thing back then. Maybe it's not like common today. But it like I've seen so many like TV shows, cartoons from like old times where that was always the joke. The joke was like, "Oh, um I don't have a boyfriend." They're like, "Oh, have you tried being a whore?" And then the guy's like, "Oh, I haven't found a girlfriend." They're like, "Oh, are you gay?" Like it's always like that, and it's like I never understood the joke. I mean, it's funny, but I mean, meh. Like I think I've heard maybe like I think I've been asked like a question like one time by my like grandparents, like one time when I was like maybe like 18, 19, where they asked me like, "Hey, do you have a girlfriend?" And I was like, "No," and they're like, "Oh, okay," like very disappointed, and I was like, "Ah, great." Like I honestly thought that was gonna be like the stereotype. Now when they asked me that, I was just like, oh shit. It's like every holiday gonna just be like, so are you married and having children yet? Sorry, family, but this tree branch is on fire and it's slowly being consumed and it's about to fall off. So sorry about that. Dude, my family must be so disappointed in the fact that they're not getting grandchildren from me. Like, dude, even if I had a girlfriend, I still don't think I'd want children. Like, I just don't like children, and I don't want to take care of one. Like, fuck that. Like, if I'm in a happy relationship, why would I jeopardize that with a fucking bulbous creature that screams, and if you so much as touch it on the head, you go to jail because it dies? I don't know. I don't know what this was. This was me talking about family trees, but then ranting about my hatred of children, then me talking about some artificial bullshit, and then me talking about how I'm a failure to my family. Hell yeah, full circle. We start stupid and we end depressing. And then I talk about nothing for a bit and then I say whatever. So yeah, whatever.